SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C-Spire. Power your home or business with C-Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C-Spire. C-Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this Friday, y'all. Man, yeah, we have made it, and you're going to like your money today. Markets in the green big
Always
time.
like my money.
The Bulls firmly in charge today because the president announced that Iran has advised that the Strait of Hormuz is open to commercial traffic, that they will not obstruct the movement of traffic through the strait anymore. However, the president did say our blockade is still in effect. And you know who's hurting the most from that? China, right? Because that's where they get a lot of their oil. It's a good strategy. It's kind of crazy to think, isn't it, Rhino, that you got this sort of relatively small body of water that is so critical to so much here on planet Earth. And, you know, the other thing that it tells us, we kind of have to have these fossil fuels. Though the Democrats have been telling us for some time, we don't need it. Right. So now we got oil plummeting this morning down to about 81, 82 bucks. That, yeah, 82.43, down 12% today, $12 and change. So, you know, it's one of the things that is just reacting to the old demand and supply. It never fails, does it? It's batting 1,000. Please tell that to the fools in the Democrat side that think they can come in and control and manipulate. How long has that been tried by fools in the world?
Over 100 years.
Exactly. Only to completely fail. But good news there, the Dow up 1,028 right now. The NASDAQ also up over 300 points. Oddly enough, gold is up as well. Silver up. Not really quite following the logic behind that. Haven't seen the 10-year Treasury today. Hopefully that is falling. Yeah, the NASDAQ up 380. So it turns out the Mag 7 back in vogue. The AI trade is alive and well. Really incredible to watch all this. And it's, I love seeing it. I just do, because only in America, man, only in this country, we are so blessed. So much good stuff going on. So hopefully the big thing is we'll start seeing the prices pull back at the pump. I know there's always a lag. People complain about that. That's largely because of anticipation by the oil and gas producers. They try to make that hay while they can, because they know when it comes down, it gets a little tougher to pull in the bacon. So, and look, it's all subject. This is what people have to understand. They don't set the price. It's all subject to markets, just like farming commodities, agricultural commodities. Same thing. We had that discussion with Commissioner Gibson the other day when he joined us out at the Holyfield Pest Management remote in Flowood. That's the way it works.
Well, they don't set the input cost.
Right.
You do have the occasional gas station that's like 50 cents more than everywhere else just because they're not paying attention or they've got some old stuff.
You're absolutely right, possibly. But in general, if they're like we typically find in this country, if they're around a cluster of sellers of gas and diesel, you look around at the signs, they're pretty dang close, right? They don't vary that much. But sometimes in a remote situation, could be different. But we all know this is well documented. That's not where they make their money. They don't make that money on you pumping gas. They make that money when you go into the store and buy all that stuff. It's got much higher margins associated with it.
Pay $6 for the $1 bag of Cheetos.
And they made more on that than they did on your fill-up. That's just the truth. That's the way that model works. Tesla also having a big day, up $15 today, over $400 a share. So from an economic perspective, looking good. The president taking victory laps, as he should. Now, he not only said to the world, hey, look, the strait's open to commercial traffic because Iran says they will not obstruct in any way. He said it will never close again. That's what he said on his Truth Social platform. That's interesting. And he didn't really give any color around that, as they say on Wall Street. I need some color. They didn't say that. He didn't say that, but he certainly did basically inform the world, yeah, that strait never closing again. That's good. That's good news, in my view. So that's what's going on the national front. Meanwhile, we got some Republicans who got in the way of legislation that would have ended a significant amount of benefits for Haitians. Now, this is something that we've talked about on the show, and here's what's going on there. And make sure I get this right, Rhino, but the bottom line is the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year, you remember, it eliminated eligibility of certain legal immigrants. So it gets complicated, but hang in there. There are legal immigrants in this country, and there are illegal immigrants. Legal immigrants means the federal government has granted to them some sort of status that allows them to reside in the country legally. Typically, the three main categories are asylees, they're seeking asylum, and that gets abused to hell and back, parolees, and refugees. And historically, those legal immigrants have been eligible for the big programs, Medicaid, SNAP, food stamps, ACA subsidies. They're eligible for those because they're legal. Illegals never have been. But there are, so the One Big Beautiful Bill Act said, no more. You're not eligible. That's what the Democrats freaking out over. You're not eligible, even though you have some sort of legal status. Now, of course, I think some of the strategy there is, you really shouldn't be here anyhow. You don't really qualify legitimately as a parolee, an asylee, a refugee. And, of course, Joe Biden and company, they were handing out those legal statuses like there was no tomorrow. I mean, they didn't do any vetting of that. It's ridiculous to even think that they did. They wanted them here, and they wanted to make them legal. Then there was the Cuban and Haitian immigrants, and they had a carve-out in the One Big Beautiful Bill. You and I found it, talked about it last year when the thing passed, July. Like, why Cubans and Haitians? And we went down the rabbit hole and realized, man, this all goes back to the Boat People episode of the 80s where there was legislation passed through the standard process that granted them some sort of special status, and the only way you could change that, according to the most powerful person in the country, the Senate parliamentarian, was to pass a measure in the Senate through overcoming the filibuster. In other words, it did not qualify for inclusion in the reconciliation bill. So I think the Republicans have figured out a way possibly to make that happen. But at a minimum, you got to start in the House. So they tried to get legislation passed in the House. How many Republicans said no there, Rhino? 10, 12, I think, that in the House that voted against this measure.
No, it was 6 on the TPS for the Haitians.
Okay. It was just Haitians. That's right. 6. Okay. Yeah. It's the protected status. So, man.
The TPS that was supposed to be 18 months starting in January of 2010.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. They keep kicking that can, essentially. Appreciate that,
right? Because it was
to
help our earthquake victims from the Haitian earthquake of January.
I forgot about that.
2010.
That's perhaps my favorite tune of all times, Faithfully by Journey. Appreciate that, Rhino. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
The Huntington's disease.
This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Bring it on! Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on!
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Well, I guess you got the memo.
Happy birthday, dude.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you. Blessed and pleased to be here. No doubt about it. So, just a point about this legal immigrants and their eligibility. That was established decades ago. And up until 1996, pretty much they were eligible for everything that a citizen was eligible for. 1996, there were some reforms, and it's pretty much, again, centered around Medicaid and SNAP benefits. And then in 2010, when the Affordable Care Act was passed into law, the subsidized coverage in the exchanges. On the C Spire text line, I've seen where 65% of all legal immigrants are on some sort of welfare. We need an immigration moratorium. Yeah, that's absolutely true. However, I will point out it's less than 10% of total benefits in these programs. 90% of it, roughly, is consumed by American citizens. And it should be, honestly. And the other thing to keep in mind, and I'm not justifying the program whatsoever. I'm just pointing out that, in general, the legal immigrants are eligible for these programs because they work, and they don't make a lot of money. And that's why they're eligible. And that's why there's an outsized number of them, 65%, that qualify for these benefits. The good news is, with respect to the immigration moratorium, that pretty much happened when Donald Trump took office. I mean, you don't see or hear or any reports of these mass migrations of people across the border. Just not happening anymore. And just like the president said when he was running, we don't need new laws. We need somebody that will enforce existing law. So, by the way, in my view, a country without a border is not a country. How could you say it is? The president also says he may head over to, as Barack Obama says, Pakistan, right, to secure and solidify the Iran deal. But right now, the markets like what they see. That's the big news of the morning, because the president announced this morning that Iran says traffic can flow. But he also followed up, did President Donald Trump, that, yep, but the blockade's still in effect. We're not letting you ship oil to China. And they're starting to feel the pinch of it. You know who else is feeling the pinch? The foolish Europeans. Are they just foolish, it seems like, in everything they do? They're starting to have a little problem with the old oil and gas. And there are some reports that might be some shutdowns of the airports and air travel in the EU because you can't get any fuel to put in the jets. They just went crazy, honestly. It's a shame when you think about it. Could we consider parts of Europe to be right in there, I guess, with Asia, early civilization on the planet? I think that's a fair assessment, isn't it? What happened along the ways? They got overrun by a bunch of liberal loons is what happened. It all started when they put way more emphasis on your leisure time than working, right? It causes laziness and complacency, and you just, we got to take care of everybody, except you ain't got no money. And you're only able to do that, as the president has pointed out countless times, and boy, I'm behind him on this one. You don't pay your fair share, guys, to keep the world from blowing up. Without us, you would have already been wiped off the map. That's the truth. We taxpayers are defending Europe because they're too damn lazy, because all their money goes to the stupid social programs. And we got people in this country that want to create that same environment and model it after Europe. It works so well over there. And you pointed out yesterday, tell the folks what you found out about the UK and the citizens of the UK. I laughed my butt off at this.
I mean, even the governors chimed in on it, but it all started with a report from, was it Polymarket that initially put out the report?
Yeah, I think so.
That Brits believed that when they were polled that if England or the UK were a state in the U.S., that they would be ranked 7th in terms of income. And the reality is they would be ranked 51st behind Mississippi.
Correct.
And people have had a whole lot of fun making fun of our friends across the pond.
Because liberals are terrible at math, right? But remember when I got the random call from The Sun, which is a big media outlet in the UK, because they had learned, wow, Mississippi now has surpassed the UK in terms of per capita GDP. And it's 50th in the country. And they traveled over here. And they found me somehow, I think from Newsmax, if I'm not mistaken. I ended up doing a little interview with them. Went down to the Capitol, did a little walk on the Capitol. That's where they wanted to film it. It was fun. Then they went up, Ole Miss was playing LSU, and he was in the Grove and all that stuff. And it was to report back to the UK, this is Mississippi. They're ahead of us, and they're last in their country. Maybe we ought to take some hints from them. And he flat asked me, what are the things you guys are doing that has caused you to leapfrog us? I said, well, for one thing, we won't tax the ever-loving life out of you, and you guys do. Right? Even the lower incomes, 50% of it goes to the government. That's one big thing. We're not anti-business like you are.
I mean, if you look at just the overburdensome nature of the tax structure of the UK, you got to pay a tax to have a TV in your house.
Unbelievable.
You got to pay a tax based on the number of windows in your home. And then you got the regulations. I want to say it's in Scotland where the regulations state that all windows must be able to be cleaned from the inside by 95% of the elderly women in the country without reaching.
That's just insane.
So they all have tiny windows that are super expensive because they got to have hinges on them to let you flip it inside to wipe the glass off.
And
I mean, it's just simple stuff like that that's been built up over eons of common law and supposedly smart people trying to help supposedly stupid people. And what you wind up with is just a tyrannical government.
That's exactly right. But, we've shared stories here on the show about crazy situations where police in England will show up at somebody's house and arrest them over a tweet. Make no mistake. Essential to the creation of wealth is individual freedom. When you start arresting people for tweets, you got no chance of producing wealth. No chance. They don't get that. The Democrats in this country don't get that. Absolutely don't get it. And in fact, it ends up costing you money. And all you got to do is look at crazy New York and see what's going on up there. Their pay-a-tier tax that they just passed, which is essentially a tax on a second home that's worth more than $5 million, right? And that goofy Mondami is out on the street. Have you seen this? Producing a video, and in the background is a building of such residences. Now, look, $5 million apartment penthouse in Manhattan is a big thing, but not what you think for $5 million. Got to remember the real estate you're sitting on and the location. So
you're likely not to get a brownstone for
that's right, exactly right. This guy's boasting about it. He's bragging about how we stuck it to him. So one of those individuals that's going to get hit with this is big-time investor, entrepreneur Ken Griffin. So I looked up his donations to New York City institutions. It's monumental. It's a huge amount of money this guy gives out of genuine charity. Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, American Museum of Natural History, Museum of Modern Art, Success Academy Charter Schools, NYU Langone Health, The Shed, Robin Hood Foundation. But they're coming after him. He paid $850,000 last year in property taxes in New York. $850,000, and that's not enough. They want more.
Sounds like they're going to lose that $850,000 when he decides to not
100%.
have a second house in New York.
And there will never be another one built. Coming right back.
From the Seabrook Dock. You're listening to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. That's from the Frontiers album, Only the Young. Appreciate that, Rhino. Journey keyboardist Jonathan Cain and Steve Perry collaborated on that one. And I don't know if you know the story behind it. I've told it on the show before, but it's been a long time. And the first person outside of the inner circle of Journey to hear that song before it was released to the public, Only the Young, was Kenny Cycaluk. He was a 16-year-old Ohio native that was battling a terminal illness. And his mother wrote the Make-A-Wish Foundation in hopes that the band, his favorite, would come pay them a visit. And so they did. And the boy was, of course, sick. He was dying. He was in a cystic fibrosis clinic in Cleveland. And they went off to see him, and they said later that they couldn't believe how sick he was. And there's a little documentary on this that where they're talking to Jonathan Cain about it. In 2013, by the way, the keyboardist that wrote the song, and he was describing this. And he broke down, started crying about it. They brought him an autographed platinum album, a football helmet signed by the 49ers, because that's where they're from, San Francisco, and a Walkman. That's back when that was a pretty big deal. And guess what the Walkman had on it? A recording of Only the Young. And they slipped headphones over his ears as they listened to this song. He listened to this song, still unreleased. Still unreleased. And so he went on to say in this interview that as soon as he stepped out of the hospital room, actually this was what Steve Perry said. He said, "I lost it." That's actually in the liner notes of the Time 3 box sets. "Nurses had to take me to a room by myself," said Steve Perry. And he died hours later. And that was the inspiration for the song, Only the Young. And Jonathan Cain said that may have been the most powerful thing that ever happened to me as a band member of Journey. Just little history there behind the song whenever you hear it. And you know, Rhino, lots of these big-time songs that we all hear and enjoy, there are typically stories behind them that inspire writers, composers. And we don't often know that. But there you go, folks. Just had to share that. Taking a little liberty here, little preference on my birthday. Appreciate that, Rhino. Great tune. And folks sending me happy birthday wishes on the text line. Really appreciate that as well. Yeah, wasn't that from the Vision Quest soundtrack? It absolutely was. A movie that had like no meaning whatsoever. But yeah, you're right. That movie did feature the tune, and it's when, I can't remember the main actor. He was practicing for a wrestling match. Remember that? And they show him out working out, running, and they're playing the music.
Matthew Modine.
That's it, yeah. Very popular actor of that time period. That's awesome. Yeah, it sure was. Cool stuff. Bill in Tupelo says, "I think most taxpayers view handing out visas with benefits as uncontrolled immigration." I agree, Bill. That's what we were just saying, that in the case of, certainly during the Biden administration, where it just got amped up significantly because so many crossed over into the country, and they were handing out these visas and legal statuses without really complying with the law with respect to vetting and confirming that that was legitimate. They truly were a legitimate asylee, parolee, refugee. You can't even wrap your head around all the downstream consequences of that wide open border period, right, over that 3 years or so when Biden was in office. I mean, it'll be affecting this country for decades. Now, it is true, many have left on their own accord. And, of course, many have been deported. But it's still a fraction of the total. But it's progress, and it's, I think, honoring the president's commitment. It's not quite to the level of what he described as mass deportation. I think that would honestly require the United States military, the armed forces, regular armed forces. And it's because Biden let so many in. We don't know, right? It's a guess at this point. The so-called experts say, yeah, it's kind of between this and that. And it's like, well, hell, if I had everything between that, as my dad used to say, oh, thanks for narrowing it down for us, right?
Yeah, some say it's as low as 10 to 13 million. Some say it's over 100 million.
Exactly.
It's a pretty wide range.
Exactly. Totally crazy. So yesterday, it's true, there are some Republicans. So the actual measure wasn't to end the statuses, it was to extend it. You pointed that out earlier. And Republicans joined, some did, a handful of Democrats, 224 to 204. 10 Republicans joined Democrats in approving this resolution. Florida Rep. Maria Elvira Salazar, Carlos Jimenez, Marlo Diaz-Balari, and Ohio Reps Mike Carey and Mike Turner. So
Salazar's the one that's got a bill that's basically amnesty.
That's exactly right. So, you sort of question her Republican bona fides in that respect. I'm not one that uses the pejorative rhino, but kind of fits in this case, right? R-I-N-O, by the way. So, yeah, they were granted protections in 2010, and as you pointed out, after the earthquake. So they're supposed to be kind of a temporary thing for the boat people, and it kept getting extended, and then again in 2010. And it is true that, the country was wiped out, catastrophic. I want to say like over 200,000 dead and 1 million people that were kind of displaced from that event, that particular earthquake. I mean, it was big, maybe the worst in the history of the world, honestly. The United States Postal Service is temporarily suspending payments to its pension plan. We've discussed this before. The deadgum Postal Service is going broke again, being taken down by a defined benefit plan that was poorly designed. Does that sound familiar? Seems like they all struggle. They told the Office of Personnel Management last week that they're going to hold off paying contributions into the system to conserve cash because otherwise they'd run out and shut down the post office. Incredible. Last time they did this was in 2011, and they came up with something to overcome that. Meanwhile, because of the staff reductions in the agency, retirees from the USPS are saying they're still waiting to get approved to get their benefits. I mean, like having to go borrow money and scrimp and save and scrap just to live, waiting months for their first check that's due because they can't get through the deadgum bureaucracy that has been created as a result of that. So, man, hate to hear that, hate to see that. Those folks work. They are entitled to those benefits. But the big news today, of course, is that Iran declared the Strait of Hormuz open to shipping. The president says, okay, but the blockade is still active. And again, he went on to reiterate, we don't expect it to ever be closed again. So that's good stuff. The Social Security, by the way, when we're talking about pensions, is announced some view into cost of living adjustments. And, of course, inflation and the cost of gas going up is affecting that, expecting a 3.2% increase in 2027. That's what's being projected at this particular point. And not only does Mamdani want to tax the residences over $5 million, he wants to tax the empty properties of New York City's wealthy. But turns out, as you know, he came from an affluent family, and he has property in Uganda that's sitting over there. Shouldn't he pay up? I don't think that way.
Well, they're also spending $30 million to open their government-owned grocery store when there are currently grocery stores in New York City for sale for $5 million.
And he's saying one a year, that's the plan or something like that. Little wheel in the sky. Appreciate that, Rhino. We're going to take a break right now. Coming back, final segment in this hour. Kenny Vest from our program, our network on the coast, is up next.
At Key Construct.
Now back to Middays with Gerard here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
You should have been gone, knowing how I made you feel, and I should have been gone after all your words of steel. Oh, I must have been a dreamer, and I must have been someone else, and we should have been over.
Well, that's the great Steve Perry at his best right there. Oh, Sherry. About his girlfriend. That was from his solo album, Street Talk, his first one, 1984, and that was the debut solo single. The other one on there, we'll have to crank it up at some point today, is Foolish Heart. That ranks up there among my top 2 or 3 songs, and man, does that ever showcase Perry's voice, that one. Incredible. The Oh Sherry video, how cheesy was that? That was like perfect for 1984. Where'd they come up with that idea, man? It was so good. Places, people. That was well cast, wasn't it? Oh, man. I don't need this. This is a love song. The best part is they're like simulating a mass, right? And there's the priest there with the acolytes, and he's like, wait, what's going on? Cut. Oh, my gosh. The cheesiness is what made it funny. That's you could just tell this was kind of the infant stage of putting video to songs, right? Progressing as we did.
Yeah, they still hadn't quite figured out the formula.
Exactly. Changed the world, though. You have to admit. Totally changed the world.
That's how you had, was Pat Benatar that had like 3 minutes of dramatic acting before the music ever started?
That's right. Well, Michael Jackson, Thriller. That was like a movie, right? Beat It. Remember that one? Unbelievable.
Reba even did it with Fancy.
Yeah.
In her music video.
That's exactly right.
Had her in the back seat of that big swanky car getting driven up to her mama's old house.
Yeah. The Judds did a lot of great video. While, what's her name? Naomi and Winona. Yeah. Did some great videos. The other one that was an attractive redhead, Patty something or another, her name escapes me, a country singer. She did a lot of great videos as well. But just reminiscing a little bit, having a little fun. I think we got enough time to insert this little video in here. If there's any question about why the Democrats are so motivated to allow illegals to flow into this country.
I'm from Brooklyn, New York. We have a diaspora that can absorb a significant number of these migrants. And when I hear colleagues talk about, the doors of the inn being closed, no room in the inn, I'm saying, I need more people in my district, but just for redistricting purposes. And those members could clearly fit here.
She's not even trying to hide it, is she? Not even trying to hide it. In other words, I need more voters so I can keep my cushy gig. You dang politicians, I swear. It's sickening. It is.
And that was from a House Foreign Affairs committee briefing being done virtually in October 2021.
It's just crazy.
They had 4.5 years to learn from their own stupidity, and they just keep doubling down.
Doesn't even try to hide it. Now, I got to find it, but yesterday I came across a video of, I think this is a local or a state official. I can see her, African-American lady with the big glasses that you typically have on, as you point out all the time. And she's like barking at somebody in the crowd where she is, saying, "Don't tell me how to control taxes," or something like that, to that effect. Again, just not even trying to hide their goal, their agenda. Put me in power and let me go tax people. And then distribute it out the door in the other direction, but let me keep some of it for myself before it goes out. That's their life. They built their life around that. Oh, man. I get fired up, but it's disgusting. I don't think my position on this is that much different than most clear-eyed, clear-thinking Americans. What disgusts them about politics. Here we go, folks. The great Steve Perry with Foolish Heart. Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
And now, another hour of the talk that keeps Mississippi talking. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Begin your transmission now.
Now on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays, live from the Element Wealth studio on this
Friday, y'all.
It's our pleasure to welcome now Kenny Best. He's the market manager for a whole bunch of stations and the program director for WCPR on the Mississippi Gulf Coast here at SuperTalk Mississippi. What's up there, Kenny?
Hey, how you doing, Gerard? So I heard the Journey coming back into the show. So there is a rumor, and it's just a rumor at this point, that they might be coming back to the coast.
Woo-hoo, that's awesome. All right. Well,
we'll get you the total hookup this time. I know we tried last time.
I know, man.
We're going to hook you up.
That would be fantastic. I would be forever grateful. That's still one of my top bucket lists in life is to actually meet the group and have my photo taken with the group. That would be so cool. Well, tell us what's going on with this crawfish and CPR festival stuff.
Man, it is so crazy busy down here that it's literally crazy. We've got so much stuff going on. You would think Led Zeppelin and the Beatles are coming. The demand tickets for tonight and tomorrow with clients and everybody on the coast. So we have the Crawfish Music Festival is happening starting tonight. Headliner is Bush. They going up at 9:15 tonight. Tomorrow we have, we're throwing it back, the Coliseum, and we got together to do some 90s rock bands. We did it last year. We brought in Puddle of Mud, record-setting ticket sales. It was a really successful event, so we're doing it again, and we brought in some core artists for CPR that we've been playing since we signed on in 1995, and these bands are still out touring, and they're all original members. So it's going to be a fun weekend.
I got you.
Saturday headliner is Buck Cherry, and there's a ton of other bands. So I can run down the lineup at one point. But, yeah, a lot of excitement down here, 6,000 pounds of crawfish.
Wow.
Lots of ice cold beer. It's outside. It's the breeze from the Gulf. The weather's going to be nice. And it's on the front lawn of the Mississippi Coast Coliseum. If, people are listening around the state, last-minute road trip, this is the weekend to come do it and check out some great 90s rock, alternative rock. And, tickets are really cheap. If you go to the ticket office at the Coast Coliseum, you can bypass the Ticketmaster fee, and you can get in for $25 a day to see these bands. You're not going to find a better deal than that anywhere. So we're excited, and we're ready to do it.
Sounds like a whole bunch of fun. So, Kenny, tell the folks your background, your history in the industry, and how this came about with being part of SuperTalk, the SuperTalk family.
Well, I'll try to be brief. I started radio in the 80s. That's how old I am in New Orleans. I was there for 10 years, and we started something called the Zephyr Fest, which was a big, huge festival there. It turned into the N Fest, and then it turned into, I don't even recall what it ended up being, Voodoo Fest out at City Park. And, had an opportunity. The owner of CPR way back in the day contacted me, and Scott Fox, who I worked in New Orleans with, was already over here playing country music, and they said they wanted to flip CPR to from country to a rock station. And my plan was to come over here, launch it, maybe hang out a year, and then either go back to New Orleans or go somewhere else. And I'm here. This makes 30 years here on the coast.
Wow.
So we started CPR. It's a dominant rock station. It's always at the top of adults 25-54 ratings wise, and it's pretty much part of the fabric of the coast when it comes to entertainment. Everybody knows CPR. Everybody knows CPR Fest. And so a few years after we launched it, we started CPR Fest in either 96 or 97, and we've been doing it pretty much ever since.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much how I got here and how we're doing it. And you think after 30 years, the station, or we would all be, just going through the motions, but man, it is the exact opposite. I think CPR is the strongest it's ever been. And we're still having fun, and everybody's upbeat, and we feel like we're 20, even though we're way older. But yeah, we're still doing it and having fun and very successful, these shows that we're bringing in, and we'll continue.
No, there's no doubt about it. Everybody knows of the channel, and everybody in the other stations. It's very popular on the coast. I hear about it all the time. You guys are always energized, got stuff going on. I think it's cool. I think it's great, and congratulations on your success and certainly your contribution to the success of this company, you and the whole team on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It's a big part of it.
Down here.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, I'm surrounding myself with professionals that I trust, and our team down here, and with SuperTalk, when you guys bought our cluster, I think it even enhanced it more, adding SuperTalk network to what we all do. Now we're one big happy team and family, and it's it's a great, obviously it's a great company, and the network is such a unique product to have. It's you can't, no other state I believe has it.
That's right.
But when you're talking, we talk about it all the time. It's not national stuff. It's Mississippi News Talk, and it's so unique, and that's why it's so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Kenny, how's the industry changed in over those 30 years or so? How has it evolved?
Well, nobody sells CDs or records anymore. They sell downloads.
Yeah.
So, the artist, with these record deals, they do 360 deals now. If a newer band signs with a label, a 360 deal is where the label gets a cut of everything. Merch, touring, royalty, everything. Back in the day, those bands kept all the merch and all the touring, and the labels had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
But survive, you have, for the industry to survive, things have to change. So that's where most new bands are now. Some, with the internet and social media, they are bands that have exploded without record labels.
That's right.
It's very doable. Some of these young bands can produce a video that looks like it cost, $1 million, and they did it from their living room. So technology has changed everything. It's a different animal now. It's done a complete 180, and bands that adapt to, what the changes have been, survive and thrive, and ones that don't, they don't even get a shot at, of making it. So, it used to be where you'd send the demo to a record company, and they listen to it, they like you, they'll fly you in. It's called a showcase, which I used to go on all the time, usually in New York or Los Angeles. And, you have a group of record guys, A&R people, maybe the president, and there's like 5 people in a room, and the band plays a set, and they decide if they want to sign them or not. Now you need to have a social media following. You have to have presence everywhere for them to even consider signing a new band.
Yeah.
So there's so many changes. You could talk 2 hours about it.
And before that, you had to pay Wolfman Jack Payola, right? That's
right. Back in the day, there was probably serious payola before my time, but yes, that's right.
And the Guess Who recorded a song about it. Clap for the Wolfman. Remember that?
That's right. I remember it, of course.
Oh, man. That is awesome. So tell the folks about the coverage of the cluster, the channels on the Gulf Coast there in South Mississippi.
Well, SuperTalk goes state line to state line. It's 50,000 watts. Yep. It goes up right outside of Hattiesburg, the signal. It's a big signal. I mean, geographically, this market is 60 miles across. It's state line to state line from Louisiana, Mississippi to Mississippi, Alabama. That's a big chunk of 60 miles to cover our entire market. CPR 50,000 watts too goes into Louisiana. Goes pretty much the same signal as SuperTalk. And then we have a Heritage Top 40 station here that's been here for 27 years. 105.9 The Monkey. That's very successful, and it's been here forever. We have a throwback station called G96.7, which it covers the market. So three music stations and SuperTalk, WOSM on 103.1.
Got it all covered. Very powerful. Kenny, appreciate you coming on, man. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to the Crawfish and CPR festivals. Appreciate it, man.
All right, Gerard. See you soon, man.
You bet. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert, here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Let me run with you tonight. I'll take you home.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays with Gerard from the Element Wealth Studio. We're pleased to welcome now Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist to SuperTalk Mississippi News.
Thanks so much. Hey, Gerard, before we get started, I'm on the coast, so I was, of course, listening to your interview with Kenny just now.
Yeah.
He didn't mention one of the bands I'm most excited to see tonight is Mammoth, which, if you aren't familiar with Mammoth, it's Eddie Van Halen's son, Wolfgang.
Oh, yeah.
Playing in this band. I mean, this is going to be, and the Toadies are playing tomorrow. I know you're a drummer. You like good music like I do. It's just going to be so much fun. Everybody needs to come.
Really cool. Yeah, man. It's a good way to kind of flush the brain of all the stress and the challenges and just sort of veg out a little bit and have some fun. Good stuff. All right.
Yeah.
What you got for us? So first thing is the IRS says folks are getting bigger tax refunds.
Yeah, the average tax refund this year is over $3,400. Let me say that again and say the number bigger, $3,400. That's an 11% increase compared to last tax season. This is according to data that was released by the IRS on Wednesday. And Congressman Michael Guest credits President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill.
We locked in lower tax rates for every American making $12,000 or less, or excuse me, $12,000 or more. We kept the standard deduction and the child tax credit from being slashed in half. We created additional deductions for seniors, those individuals who work hourly and are paid by overtime, those people who earn their income by way of tips.
And according to the Treasury Department, more than 53 million filers claim some of those new deductions. I only got $85 back federal, but, I'm pretty happy. It's more than I had yesterday.
You didn't have any tips or overtime. Prices, that's the problem. You didn't get paid tips or overtime.
No, but everybody seems to have that second gig now. My hairdresser is doing deliveries, and she's been like, "Hey, Kelly, this is great." Because we're both empty nesters now. And she's like, it's a great way to make a little extra money on the weekend. And she uses it to pay for her daughter's college expenses. Good. I mean, so a lot of people are doing this. Hey, Gerard, I wanted to share something kind of funny with you.
Yeah.
I am on a lot of newsy links on Twitter. And I came across this really funny post right before you and I came on the air today from the U.S. Oil and Gas Association. And I wanted to share this because it's Friday, and why not? Everybody could use a laugh, right? Yeah. They put up a link from Bloomberg where they said, ironically, America's competitive edge has increased due to the Iran conflict as the price of natural gas has soared in the rest of the world but fallen in the U.S. And then there's a link to the article. Well, the U.S. Oil and Gas Association, I don't know who's working their social media Twitter feed, but they're really funny. You should get on it if you're not. They said their response was, actually, what's ironic is rain on your wedding day, a free ride when you've already paid, but America's energy independence because we bet on shale when others bet on wind. Well, life has a funny way of helping you out. I heard that somewhere. So hilarious. And gas prices are down, by the way. Yeah. And I know it's been kind of weird. I've been watching it this week. The current average in Mississippi for a gallon of regular today is $3.72, down from $3.77 a week ago. Diesel prices are going down. They're at $5.20 today in Mississippi, down from $5.30 a week ago. So we're starting to see, and it looks like they've reopened the Strait of Hormuz today. That was a big national news story. So good things going on.
That's right. We've been talking about the Strait this morning and how the price of oil is descending as we speak, as a matter of fact, about 12% today. So, yeah, we've been tracking the price at the pump as well. It's, of course, a little slower to respond on its way down than it is on its way up. We kind of talked about that a bit as well. Let's see what else we got. We got former Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, announcing that he is a candidate for governor of Mississippi.
Yeah, he made it official this week. It was really no surprise. I think it was a pretty well-known secret that he was going to do that. Yeah. He retired from the State House of Representatives in January 2024, launched his bid for the highest office on Tuesday night in his hometown of Clinton. And he is vowing to work with the state legislature to eliminate property taxes, expand homestead exemptions for seniors, and slash the grocery tax. That's part of his platform. He's also talked a little bit about data centers. He said he wants to fight to ensure they pay their fair share and don't pass on higher energy costs to consumers. But we know Mississippi already has laws in place to protect consumers from rate increases. But, you know, obviously he'll be keeping an eye on that situation. So there you go.
Okay. All right. So we've also got the Greenwood LaFleur Hospital. And we sort of saw this coming. We got an article on our website. I think Caleb Saylor's produced it. Talk about that.
Caleb does such a fantastic job with those online articles. I cannot commend him enough. He's really good. Greenwood LaFleur, which has often been at the center of Mississippi's healthcare crisis. You know, rural hospitals across the state are in trouble. It's not just Greenwood LaFleur that are, you know, pinching pennies. Well, they officially filed for bankruptcy this week. The move, according to officials, would give it time to negotiate a possible deal for the University of Mississippi Medical Center to buy it out. And we asked Democratic Senate Health Chair Hob Bryan if he thinks that deal will go through.
I grew up being a Mississippi State fan during the Johnny Vaught era. It's not in my makeup to ever think anything good is going to happen. I don't care what the score is late in the third quarter. It doesn't matter. It's not going to work out. So I hope it does. I worry about everything.
He was on one of the shows earlier this week, and he just was so pessimistic. I was like, dude, all right, I'm the opposite there. But anyway, the bankruptcy filing is intended to help Greenwood LaFleur protect its remaining cash reserves and finalize this potential deal with UMC. So we'll see what happens there.
Okay, got it. So fertilizer inputs to the farming process, huge problem. And, of course, Mississippi has a huge agricultural industry, and it's causing problems, this cost of fertilizer.
It really, and it's Mississippi's number one industry, agriculture is. And there was this new survey out from the American Farm Bureau Federation showing that roughly 70% of U.S. farmers can't afford all the fertilizer they need this season. And farmers in the southern region reported the greatest difficulty in paying for this fertilizer. Now, part of the reason fertilizer prices have gone up so much is because a lot of the fertilizer has to go through the Strait of Hormuz. So hopefully we'll see some relief here in the near future. But farmers have been dealing with increased input costs as well. Row crop farmers have been having a really tough time. And this week, actually, April 17th, was the deadline for row crop producers to sign up for the Farmers Bridge Assistance Program. So hopefully everybody took advantage of that.
Yep. The scams that are going across Mississippi, I've heard some folks talking about this. What's up?
Well, and it's a nationwide thing, but we got some Mississippi facts this morning. Online scams and other internet crimes skyrocketing with a record $16.6 billion in losses reported to the FBI in 2024 alone. And Kimberly Campbell, the state director of AARP Mississippi, was on Mornings with Richard Cross this morning with the Mississippi stats.
It's awful. So in just the state of Mississippi alone, in 2024, over 36,000 fraud reports were made, which totaled roughly, get ready, $44 million in fraud. That's Mississippi. I'm not talking about the nation. That's Mississippi.
And according to the Pew Research Center, 73% of adults have experienced things like credit card fraud, ransomware, online shopping scams. Older adults tend to be more vulnerable, but significant portions of both older and younger adults have been scammed and targeted online. And I got to tell you, Gerard, I weekly am doing a story about a scam being perpetrated in some part of Mississippi. So
I got you.
It's very frequent.
Incredible.
Very sad.
All right, Kelly, appreciate the rundown. Really good. Appreciate all the great work that the SuperTalk Mississippi News Department does for the state of Mississippi. Kelly Bennett, multimedia journalist with SuperTalk Mississippi News. Have a good one, Kelly. See you.
Have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. Coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this. On SuperTalk Mississippi. Let's go.
Broken promise one more time. Say you believe in love, and still you run. You only believe in God, and you come undone. So here you are. You brought everything on yourself. So easy to fall when you're alone.
Studio album by Journey. That's 1996. The great Steve Perry, of course, on the lyric. Maybe, Rhino, amongst my favorite lyrics in a Journey tune You only believe in God when you come undone. I don't know if you caught that. That's just like a perfect way to state it right there. Oh, yeah, only when it's convenient. Oh, man. Love it. Appreciate that. Really do. So you may have heard Kelly Bennett from our news department talk about newly announced candidate Philip Gunn for governor of the state. And so now we got at least two who have officially announced, and others are expected. But there's a high degree of focus on property taxes. It's probably the least favored tax people pay, property taxes, and either the significant reduction or a complete elimination thereof. And while I'd be all for that, I love it. I pay a lot of property taxes, a lot of people do, and of course you pay real property taxes on your real estate if you own any, and then you pay personal property taxes on your vehicle. Ad valorem taxes, they are also referred to, of course, ad valorem taxes. And all that sounds great, except counties pretty much operate exclusively with revenue from property taxes. That's how they pay law enforcement. That's how they pave the roads and maintain the bridges and the infrastructure of the county. That's the source of those funds are property taxes. That's just a structure that evolved in this country going back a long, long time ago. And I know that it's unpopular. Like I said, I get it. And I'd like nothing better than to figure out a way to eliminate it. But just saying, oh, just get rid of it, no more revenue, that's not practical. That's not tenable. It's not viable. It's not sensible. And keep in mind where on your real property tax, well, your personal property taxes too, the majority of that goes to school districts. About 50%, maybe a little more than 50%, depending on the county and the school district. So if you want a reduction or elimination of property taxes, and I do, and by the way, I've done what I'm about to tell you, go to your supervisors, go to your school boards, go to your city government. Hey, I want some relief on my property taxes because they control it. In the state of Mississippi, they control. They're authorized by the state to control it. I've told supervisors in Madison County with all this new revenue coming in from the AWS project, I've told them, you need to be thinking about paring down the property tax millage because of you gotten a bunch of new revenue coming in you would not have had without this project. Give some of that benefit to the taxpayers locally, in the county, in the cities. But if there's a goal at least or discussion of teacher pay, it's a big thing. Well, if you're going to reduce property taxes, that's less money going to school districts. Makes it kind of hard to raise teacher pay. Are schools perfectly efficient with their spending? No, of course not. Managing their budget? We can all improve that. It doesn't matter if you're a public sector or private sector entity. That's a continuous effort. Continuous. You don't do it business, you go bankrupt if you don't do it continuously. So there's a conflict there. We care about teachers. We want to give teachers more pay. But by the way, we're cutting the revenue. It's kind of a tough deal. The other thing is when you look at the percentage of education dollars that flows to the classroom, mainly in the form of teacher pay, and the rest or the other big piece that goes to the back office, so-called administration, it's been shown that Mississippi has a higher percentage relative to the neighboring states of dollars that go to the back office versus to classroom. But there are two factors in that calculation. That's largely because our teacher pay is lower. If the teacher pay goes up, that percentage goes down. If we normalized our teacher pay with the other states, we'd actually be below them. And I've done the math in terms of the dollars that goes to the back office. So it's a bit misleading at a minimum. You know what I'm trying to say, to project that. And while it's absolutely true that we don't like to pay these property taxes, I'm with you, and we certainly don't like car tax, and it's absolutely true that the car tax in the state of Mississippi, if I'm not mistaken, are the second or third highest in the nation, and that's crazy. And I don't like that either. But this is something I would encourage you to consider. When you look at the neighboring states and you compare, because that's what usually happens. Well, when you look at what Alabama and Tennessee, Arkansas, Louisiana pay for car tax, a lot less. However, they pay a lot more for sales taxes. They're going to get you one way or another. It's not like, wow, Louisiana, they've cracked a code, right, on how to run a state with revenue and money and all that kind of stuff. And don't even think about Florida, because Florida has got water all around it and theme parks and sunshine all year. And guess what that draws? A bunch of people from all over the world.
Florida does have one thing in their constitution, actually, from, the mid-'90s.
What's that?
That likely would have alleviated some of the headaches people were experiencing with the new assessment.
Okay.
That caused their tax bill to go up.
Yep.
Because in Florida, they've got the Save Our Homes Amendment, which limits the increase, the annual assessment increase, at 3% for all homestead primary residences. It's 3% or the CPI, whichever's lower. And that's the cap on how much the annual assessment can be increased.
Okay. But
we don't have something like that.
No, we don't.
I think the only carve-out we have is for seniors, and that's only for, the first $7,500 of the property value?
You get a minor additional homestead exemption as a senior. I just did it, and it doesn't amount to a whole lot, honestly. I mean, it's welcome, don't get me wrong, but it's not the same as really reducing that millage, that factor that's applied to the assessed value of the property. But our sales taxes are the lowest in the South. I just got to point that out. So, yeah, they have lower car tax, but we have lowest sales taxes. You go to Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee, Arkansas, there's all county or parish in Louisiana, plus municipal taxes. Last I checked, if I'm not mistaken, in Memphis, 9.75% versus our 7%. So that's 2.75% more. And our property taxes are actually lower than all the neighboring states except for Alabama. Now, our car tax, that's a different story. But, again, it's because we have lower sales taxes. Pick your poison is the point here. Pick your poison. It's not like the other states are just super efficient at running government. Don't believe that for a dang minute. They've just developed and evolved a structure through the decades of we're going to tax consumption. And I'm for that. I'd prefer to do that. And by the way, I did look into that. What would it take if we eliminated car tax in the state of Mississippi? No ad valorem taxes on car tax. Did a county-by-county analysis of what that would take. And it turns out it's in that 1.2 to 1.5% sales tax. If you converted, for example, the revenue production from ad valorem taxes on your vehicle to sales taxes, voluntary sales taxes, 1.2 to 1.5%. Depends on the county. Now, some counties don't have a lot of retail sales, and some counties have more. But that would mean counties would then participate in that additional layer. So right now, when you buy something outside of a municipality, all that money goes to the state. County doesn't participate in that. Cities do. Municipalities get that 18.5% diversion. But that's how to do it, and that's how the other states have done it. That's how they've kept car tags so low. But even in a state like Alabama, for example, they have somewhat lower property taxes than we do, but they got much higher sales taxes. Birmingham and New Orleans, it's 10%. It's 9.93% in Little Rock. Sure. It's just, and if you told them, hey guys, go to 7%, they'd say, well, hell, we couldn't run the place like that. We'd have to come up with property taxes or some other form of income production. Coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Rally Up a Mississippi.
Are we going to do this? Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
On SuperTalk Mississippi.
The chaps from Wales, Badfinger. Appreciate that, Rhino. Another good one. One of the first tunes, actually album, straight up the name of the album. I learned to play the drums, too. Put my headphones on. Back away. Really good. Appreciate that. So, just talking about this sales tax thing. The property tax thing. Look, it's popular to tell people, I'm going to go out and eliminate property taxes or any taxes or grossly reduce. But anybody that proposes that should show a budget. Let's get the budgets for every, like I said, city, school district, and county. Show the current budget. That's all public record. Current financial statement. And then show it assuming that policy was implemented, what their financial statements look like, absent that revenue. If property taxes were eliminated, the revenue on the vast majority of the county's income statement in the state would be zero. That's just the truth. That's how it works. So it's one thing to say it because it's politically popular, and I get it, and it attracts voters, but it's quite another to implement it. And the people should know what that looks like, what that would look like. I can tell you in business, when you start making proposals like that have a significant impact on those sections of the income statement, you better have some pro formas that go out a few years that are believable and that you will be held accountable for. You see, the difference in politics is the only accountability is at the ballot box, and that only happens every 2, 4, 6 years. In business, you know what happens? You don't eat. That's where the accountability is.
Yeah, the accountability is every payroll period.
Every time. That's why you tend not to just put stuff out there because it sounds good. And if you do it, if you're a public company, and you do that to Wall Street, you get punished. Punished. There's a bigger problem, honestly, with a sandbagging than there is overly optimistic guidance, because they know, man, if I guide too high and we don't hit it, we will get punished. And that costs everybody. That could literally take jobs away, cause a company to lose so much capital they'd have to start shedding jobs. So just keep that in mind, that this all sounds great, but the proof is in pro formas, projections that show what the financial statements for these various entities would look like. The same is true for eliminating the income tax here in Mississippi. As far as I know, Rhino, there's no what's called a fiscal note attached to that legislation that actually shows what we expect to happen in the future through the years as this thing is phased out, both from an expense and projected expense spending and revenue side. And coming up next is Richard Roberson, President CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. We're going to talk about what is going on in the Medicaid program in nationally in Washington and how that will affect us in the state of Mississippi and, of course, all the other states as well. That is going to sting. And here's what I think is going to happen. You heard the president say it a couple of weeks ago. I know I'm dwelling on this, but it bears repeating. He says, we're fighting a war. We're trying to protect the country. We need to up the military budget by $500 billion. We got to start thinking about Medicare and daycare and Medicaid. Maybe we need to send those back to the states, and they're going to have to come up with a revenue. Get ready. Prepare for that. So like I said, while it's popular to make all these commitments and pledges, just remember that we right now are on thin ice because of how reliant we are on the federal government. And if the federal government starts getting serious, as I believe they are under this president, about reducing spending, that will affect the state. And the state will either have to reduce spending substantially or come up with more money, and that's almost impossible, as you know, in Medicaid because of the way that program works. So,
I mean, any reforms to any tax have to go through the legislature. When you look at property tax legislation under the dome, the last few years, you've had bills drop to, like, for example, raise the exemption for seniors.
Sure.
Because it's currently $7,500. I'm fairly certain that was set decades before I was ever born.
Yep.
Inflation's been a you-know-what since well before I was born, but that number hasn't changed. They can't even get bills through that would up that assessment or up
a good
that
point.
Exemption.
It's a good point. And you know why? Because, just as I said, the districts, the counties, the cities, you take that revenue away from us here, legislature, it's going to be hell to pay. They flood the Capitol, right? Just as they did when the legislature proposed increasing the PERS contribution rate. Remember that? Same deal. Telling you, man. It ain't that easy. Everybody's got a sacred cow, and if you want your property taxes to be lowered, your car tax to be lowered, by all means, go to your...
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
That's what I like to listen to.
You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert. Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Here again, oh Lord, haven't been home in a year, oh Lord. I hope she holds on a little longer.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays from the Element Wealth Studio, hour 3 of the program on this
Friday, y'all.
We got some tickets to give away today, Rhino, I think we got some later on in the program, and we will certainly get to that. I've been kind of remiss about getting to some of our stuff. Yeah, we got Chicago tickets again today, and we'll get to that later. But right now, it's Richard Roberson. He is the, what's your title now? President CEO of Mississippi Hospital Association.
When I left the office to get here, that's what it was. I hope it still is. We'll see. It's been half an hour. Things change fast here in Jackson.
That's right. Want to make sure I got that right. So, a wild and woolly legislative session, for sure. I had some legislation that is certainly related to health care, the provision of it, the health care, the hospital association specifically, or the hospital industry, I should say, in the state. What's your take?
Look, I mean, overall, it's a good session for health care. Some reforms in the certificate of need process, which we've talked about for years. And, we need to be very thoughtful and intentional about how we change the certificate of need process. The last significant changes were in 2016. So, 10 years later, it's probably time to look at it again. So we increased the capital expenditure requirements, which essentially means, look, if you're replacing a linear accelerator, if you're replacing some medical equipment, and over the last 10 years, the cost of that has gone up for sure. You shouldn't have to go back to the state to ask permission or ask for the state's blessing to say, yeah, you can upgrade that facility or that piece of equipment. Go ahead and do it as long as it's within a certain cost range. And so, we doubled all those capital expenditure thresholds that were in place 10 years ago. That gives folks a little more breathing room, saves really some unnecessary cost in the system of having to come back and file those fees. So we got that done. Rural CON reform was part of this agenda this year. We got that done. Rural counties, in counties less than 15,000 or in counties that don't have a municipality greater than 15,000 to focus on, what has been called the show enough rural areas of Mississippi. Allow them to do one thing between this year and next summer to get a free pass, get out of jail free card, if you will, on CON stuff. So if they want to add a service line their community will support, they ought to be able to do that without fear of having to go through an extra $25,000, $50,000 in filing fees and lawyer fees and all these things that go into that process. So it's a savings to the healthcare system, and what we've talked about for the time I've been in this role and the time I've been around MHA is let's focus on things that make sense for the patients. Let's focus on things that are good, that save patient money, save healthcare dollars, and just make sense. And so some of these limited reforms I think are very thoughtful, very intentional. It starts to open some things up. It loosens some of the restrictions, and let's see where it goes. One of the things we've been really concerned about is Mississippi is the lowest cost hospital care in the country. And other states that have certificate of need laws in place on hospitals, they're all more expensive. So we got to be careful that when you open that thing up, that you're not running up cost as well.
Yeah, it makes sense. And that, of course, was part of the original premise, one of the original premises of this whole CON concept.
Exactly.
Was that.
Yeah, I mean, when it started in the 70s, it was a planning tool. It was to say, look, we now recognize after the 1960s when the government got into, in a very big way, Medicare and Medicaid, the government's now responsible for paying for a running ton of healthcare expenses. The government ought to be overseeing the proliferation of healthcare services across the state and across the country. And in the 70s, they put these CON laws in place so that the state would be able to be a check and balance on that. A lot of states repealed entirely their CON laws.
About 31, is it last I checked?
In various shapes, form, or fashion, yes. Okay. But again, we're the lowest cost. Yeah. And I think there's a reason. Well, there's several reasons for that, really. But that is one of the reasons why we've held on to some of these things where the government does play a vital role in controlling health care expenses and over-proliferation and duplication of unnecessary services. Yeah. So, Chairman Creekmore did an amazing job this year. Chairman Bryan worked with us on things. The legislature extremely supportive of these reforms, and they moved on through the process, got the governor's sign off, and here we go. So we'll see. I think there's some good things that can come from that bill.
I feel like, Richard, that the hospital industry and just the healthcare industry in general is being besieged from all directions with changes, policies, reforms that affect their top and bottom line. And what I mean by that is you got stuff coming out of the federal government. Obviously, that's huge, especially when you got 70-something million people on Medicaid, 45, 50 million on Medicare, and then you got 20 million in the ACA exchanges. You got TRICARE. Yep. So the government is still, I like to say, is really in the health insurance industry at the end of the day. I mean, it seems like that's more of a primary core function than it was ever intended. But you got lots of different dynamics going on right now in the industry. What are your people concerned about, and what are they bracing for?
Well, a lot of things. There's shifting market dynamics. In Mississippi, there's shifting market dynamics population-wise. Population-wise in our rural areas, we've been going down. Yeah. That's a concern in our rural hospitals. But even as a state, we really have not grown significantly population-wise, and so that does affect some of the federal distribution of funds that get tied to your population. But, some of the cuts that are being talked about again in D.C., I think you mentioned just a little while ago, there's a lot of talk about expanding the military budget, which obviously we're supportive of a strong military and whatever that takes to get to that point. But we need to be careful how we get there. The healthcare industry in Mississippi is poised to lose hundreds of millions of dollars over the next few years from some cuts that came about through the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Okay. And, the Rural Health Transformation Funds can help offset a little bit of that, but it's not going to all go to hospitals, and we know that. And, any additional cuts that might come down the line, we're kind of at the point now we're cutting to the bone.
Like I don't think it covers it either, does it?
It does not
the
cover
amount being lost from the reforms is not covered by the rural. That was the purpose, was to be an offset in there.
It was to mitigate some of the damage. And look, just like anything, I mean, it sounds good on paper and looks good, and then the devil's in the details about how it gets implemented. And there's some potential to do some really good things. Yeah. But it's a 5-year program, and last I checked, most people's life expectancy is going to exceed the next 5 years. We're still going to need a healthcare system to take care of people.
Yeah.
And so we've got a plan for what are we talking about 5 to 10 years. And one of the things we talk about a lot is we would love government to say, look, this is what we want. This is what we want our healthcare system to look like. Y'all go make it happen. We got some smart people out there in healthcare, whether they're physicians and nurses and administrators. They'll figure it out. But when we keep changing these things every 2, 4, 6, 8 years, that's when things get wonky. So
hard to manage in that
very
kind of
hard.
environment.
Yeah, very. I mean, in any industry we see change.
No doubt about
not
it.
complaining about that.
Yeah.
But there are dramatic changes that happen across this space, and it's hard to plan what's about to happen next when administrations change and Congress flips and midterms come and we go these wild ebbs and flows, which has really kind of been the case since the Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So the changes to Medicaid in particular must have been felt by the Division of Medicaid because they came calling on the legislature this year for a pretty big increase to their budget.
Yeah, they'd been socking away money that they didn't need because of the COVID-enhanced payments for a few years and some payments that the government, state government, had level funded them through that crisis. They were able to benefit from a surplus that they used and spent that down over the last couple of years now to now where they finally, spending down the surplus. Now that year-over-year request got to be pretty significant. At one point, it was pushing $400 million in the budget request from this state fiscal year going into next fiscal year. I think the legislature looked at that. There were some questions because the agency was asking for $1 amount. The governor's budget request was lower, significantly lower than that. So there were some questions from the legislature about, do we go with the agency? Do we go with the governor? I think they ended up being closer to what the governor had asked for. And, so we're hopeful that that's going to make it all work and that we're not going to see any cuts across the board. There's some protections in place because hospitals pay almost $500 million in provider taxes straight to Medicaid. There's some protections about cutting hospital payments, but, we don't need other providers to get cut either. So we're hopeful it all balances out.
Yeah. Well, I think they ended up settling with about a $200 million increase on top of what was a $900 million from the prior year. Yep. So now we're at $1.1 billion.
And look, the provider taxes that hospitals and nursing homes and ambulances pay. I mean, you're kicking in another $600 to $700 million in taxes that are just straight taxes paid by providers, not coming out of the general fund. So our state share is now getting kind of close to that $2 billion number.
We'll be right back. We got Richard Roberson, President, CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association.
Hello. Attention, adoring fans. It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk Mississippi.
All over it is Rhino with the Journey tunes today. Appreciate that, man. So we're talking to Richard Roberson, President and CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association. So my concern with the Medicaid deal is while the legislature didn't give them the funding that they requested, and they tempered that somewhat, may show up again next year and say, okay, we got a deficit situation. You got to go back and fund it like we did this past year.
Yeah, and I think that's what everybody's going to be paying attention to as we go through the next state fiscal year as to where are they, what's the budget looking like, do we have the funds? We don't want it to run out. We don't want there to be cuts in provider payments or elimination of optional services. At some point there needs to be a consistent strategy about the acceptable level of reimbursements and engagement with providers and enrollment levels and a strategic plan for how we're going to address that program.
Yeah.
And there's ways that other states fund it, without going into their general fund. You got states that get contributions from cities and counties that help offset that.
Yeah.
And so, that may be something for the state to look at. I mean, honestly, again, we've got some of the lowest paid providers in the country across the board on many things. Our Medicaid program, to their credit, has historically been a better payer than other states simply because we have a greater need for that Medicaid program to pay providers well, because we have so many Mississippians dependent upon and receiving care through Medicaid.
Right.
700,000 has been about where we have sat for a long time.
Yep.
We spiked to over 900,000 during the COVID pandemic and
Yep.
lock-ins and all that. Medicaid is a vital piece of the healthcare puzzle in Mississippi, and for our hospitals, typically between the Medicaid program and the Medicaid managed care programs, about 20% of our revenue is coming from them, and that's about 20% of the patient caseload, and so it's a big chunk of what our hospitals rely upon for payment, and what all of us, even if you're not on Medicaid, you want to make sure that whoever is paying the bill is able to pay it, because that gets spread out across all of us as taxpayers too,
and also,
helps all of us as patients.
That's right, and also it could be a factor in commercial premiums too.
It absolutely it helps keep that balance in place for commercial, because now a provider may not, in order to pay their staff, and their labor costs are primarily what we pay for in healthcare.
Yeah.
You got to keep it all balanced, and Medicaid plays a big part of that. And the state, we're very grateful for what they do, very grateful for the legislature providing the funding. We as taxpayers have to be good stewards of that as well. If you're a provider, you need to be good stewards of that dollar as well. So,
yeah.
and the hospitals do a really good job, by and large, of making it all work and putting it all together. One way or the other.
Yeah. So, a recent announcement, as you're aware, Greenwood LaFleur Hospital announcing that they filed for bankruptcy, and there's some reports that maybe a handful of others across the state are also facing the same situation. What can you tell us about that?
Again, Greenwood has kind of been through some ebbs and flows over the last several years. It's been fairly well known that there were some problems up there. A lot of it has to do just with the revenue. I mean, a few years ago they shut down their labor and delivery services, which is primarily a Medicaid service. Over 60 to 66% of the babies born in the state of Mississippi are covered by Medicaid.
57 is the latest number I saw. Is it over 60 now?
It has traditionally been 66% for a long time, in that range. And so when, and in some parts of the state, it's way higher than that.
Yeah,
and Greenwood's
probably
Medicaid
90.
population was, the number of babies born with Medicaid coverage in Greenwood when they were delivering babies was probably over 90%, I would just guess. So, they got rid of that service because it is expensive to pay for those providers and provide those services, and they got rid of it, and then a year or two later, Medicaid became one of the best payers for that service when the supplemental payment program grew. But by the time you make the decision at that point in time to divest of those services, those providers leave. They go to other relationships with other hospitals or leave the state entirely in some cases, and so it's hard to bring those services back once they're gone. Had they been able to keep those at that time, things could be different. The revenue certainly would have been better. But they have still got challenges with a very small commercial payer mix in Greenwood, and so the margins are just really tough.
Well, is it true, Richard, that just talking about the payer mix, and that's the term that's used frequently in the hospital industry? It's different than all others because for the same service, you got essentially three different rates of pay, three different reimbursement levels, maybe even more than three, honestly. You could
and even within your commercial payers, certainly Medicare is going to pay whatever Medicare decides to pay because they're federal government. They just dictate and tell you what they're going to pay. You don't really negotiate with Medicare. Medicaid is the same way. You don't really negotiate your payments with the Medicaid agency. Now, you can negotiate with the Medicaid managed care plans, but there's typically a range that you can go, only so high with.
Yeah.
Commercial payers are a little bit different, but the rate of reimbursement a hospital may be able to negotiate with Blue Cross may be different than what they can negotiate with United or Aetna, Cigna, any of the other payers. So it's really about the negotiation process and about what those insurance companies may be willing to pay, and it's different.
Is it true, if you looked at the payer mix, that in general, unless a hospital has a significant component of their overall revenue coming from commercial reimbursement, that it's a huge challenge financially?
It is a big challenge. And, across the state, the payer mix typically falls into about 20% to 25% Medicaid, that's kind of the range.
Yeah.
40 to 45% Medicare, including Medicare Advantage.
Yep.
Well, if you look at that, you're pushing 65-70% of your revenue from
sort
Medicare,
of a below
Medicaid,
par reimbursement.
Yeah. And then you throw in the Affordable Care Act exchange plans,
Yep.
which until the tax subsidies came in place were challenging for hospitals because the deductibles were higher. So the deductibles being higher prevented people from being able to pay their full medical bills for the hospitals. So, but about 10-15% are covered under that, and then maybe 15-20% on commercial. So you get close to that 100% range by putting those things together. The whole pie is 100%, but there's a lot of pieces that aren't exactly the same.
Makes sense.
So very small percentage of hospital revenue across the state is coming, or hospital patients are coming with commercial, employer-sponsored commercial coverage.
Okay.
And it just makes it a challenge. And, those tend to be your better payers. Opportunities to negotiate depend upon the financial environment for the insurance company and utilization of services. If utilization goes through the roof, man, those insurance companies can't afford to do that.
Totally.
So, there's a lot of different expectations that have to be managed between the providers, the payers, and the patients.
So I would say that probably, and this is just more as a question, most of the public policy that affects the industry comes out of Washington, more so than. Would you agree?
I totally agree. Because they're regulating Medicare and they regulate Medicaid too.
And given that that's such a significant amount of those who have coverage in the state of Mississippi. And then you got uninsured, and in that case you're dependent on some help from the federal government on that.
That's right.
And then you got the classifications with the critical care and all that sort of stuff, which all comes from the federal government. And
that's right.
By the way, you just had some protection on, is it Franklin County, I think?
Franklin County. Senator Hyde-Smith was very instrumental in helping push through a bill that extended the critical access hospital designation for Franklin County that essentially saved that hospital for that community. And honestly, not just for that community, but they have a lot of patients from across the region that go to Franklin County because they provide a very niche specialty service for vent-dependent patients, where they help wean vent-dependent patients off of that and allow them to re-enter their homes, re-enter the community.
Gotcha.
And they have just developed a wonderful program down there, and it is vital not just to the citizens in Franklin County, but they're drawing patients from other parts of Mississippi and frankly from other states. So it's a huge thing for them, and we're grateful that got extended. We hope that other critical access hospitals can kind of be grandfathered in and not jeopardized just when a road goes from 2-lane to 4-lane. That seems kind of like a silly reason to kick someone off a designation sometimes, but that's the way the rules were written years and years ago.
Before we go, the session's over this year. Thank God.
Yep.
What do you need next year? What are you working on?
A lot of things from a federal perspective. Medicare wage index, we need that to go up. For Mississippi, we're one of, if not the lowest. That prohibits us from being able to recruit across state lines. That's a federal issue. From a state issue, we're going to look and see what the CON stuff does. We're going to look at the Rural Health Transformation Fund, see how they're spent. There's going to be a lot of things that that we'll be paying attention to and kind of seeing. We're going to catch our breath over the next few weeks before we start thinking about next year. So we got folks that have worked really hard, and we're glad for what we got. But the work's never done.
I get it. Richard Roberson, President, CEO of the Mississippi Hospital Association, has been our guest. Appreciate you coming on, Richard.
Thanks, Gerard. Always good to see you.
Coming right back in the Element Well studio. Got tickets to give away to Chicago at the Brandon Amphitheater.
From the Seabrook.com.
And now, the talk that keeps Mississippi talking.
Now, on to the real part.
Dynamite! On SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's middays. We've got half an hour remaining. We appreciate you joining us today. Great guest lineup. Started out with Kenny Best, market manager for a cluster of stations, part of the TeleSouth network down on the coast. He's the program director, more importantly, for WCPR Gulf Coast. And they've got the big CPR, Crawfish and CPR Festival, I should say, coming up. Sports Talk Mississippi, they're going to be at Northwest Mississippi Community College in Senatobia next Wednesday. They'll be there for the Celebration of Champions, honoring an incredible year of successes for Northwest Community College. On today's episode of In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear part 2 of an interview with best-selling author and entrepreneur Jay Sammet. You can listen to In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar today at 1 p.m. here on SuperTalk Mississippi. And in the next segment, Rhino's going to give away some tickets to Chicago coming to Brandon on May 1st. The president just said Iran has agreed to hand over nuclear dust. That's what he said. He said this dust was created by our great B-2 bombers. No money will exchange hands in any way, shape, or form, because there were some rumors going around that we were going to hand them over a cool $20 billion for their uranium, enriched uranium. But he just posted the USA will get all nuclear dust created by our great B-2 bombers. No money will exchange. Again, we just read that, but emphasizing it. He reiterated his claim that Iran has agreed to surrender its enriched uranium. But the Iranians haven't confirmed that. Meanwhile, the markets like the fact that Iran did announce earlier today that commercial traffic will be allowed to sail through the Strait of Hormuz, and that's got traders feeling optimistic about winding this thing down. As a result, the price of oil now down to $84, so it's off its lows of the sessions, down to $84. That's certainly better than when it's got that 1-0 handle in front of it. Traders like that, feeling pretty good about it. We've had some reports this week, financial reports coming in, quarterly reports from some big guns, and so far investors have been pretty optimistic and pretty pleased with what they have seen. Consumer sentiment is, however, a bit down, but small business sentiment has really been under pressure. And I just think that's because of the cost of all these inputs, in particular diesel, which is causing problems for lots of businesses, in particular small businesses. Mike in Fannin says, happy birthday, Gerard. Really appreciate it, Mike. Thank you. Very appreciative. Ben from Madison says, all that being said, Iran is still saying the Strait will require a fee to pass through, so we are getting some conflicting information. I agree. I saw that as well, Ben. But I think the president came out and said we're not paying any fees. Don't know. Also, he said, what I meant to say was the president obviously didn't appreciate the criticism by some stating he was a puppet of Netanyahu. That was from an earlier comment that Ben made, text he sent. I was worried this Iran conflict turning into another endless war in the Middle East. Time will tell, but hopefully we will have reached a conclusion, or we have reached a conclusion. It seems the president didn't like the criticism that he was doing Israel's bidding by stating he is prohibiting them from further strikes in Lebanon. Yeah, he was criticized for that. The young people in this country in particular felt like that he was placating Netanyahu and being guided by Netanyahu and not necessarily what's in the best interest of the country. I don't really see that, honestly. I think he's sincere and authentic in saying we believe they were super close to having a nuclear weapon and we couldn't let that happen, thus we had to act. But Ben goes on to say these critics should take note that it's a very strong statement, so to suggest he is a puppet after a statement like that is illegitimate, in my opinion. I tend to agree with you, Ben. I don't see him as a puppet to Netanyahu. Was Netanyahu pushing him? Probably. Possibly. Trying to, again, rid the world of this menace, which is a much larger threat to them because they're pretty close. We got an ocean between us. That makes a difference. But it's still problematic for the entire globe, honestly. Really incredible. Let's see. Happy birthday, Big G. Appreciate that. That's on the 601. Happy birthday, Gerard, on the 901. Thanks for all you do. Appreciate that. Thank you very much. So somebody said, how old are you? I am 68 today. 68 years old. Don't mind telling you that. Nothing to hide whatsoever with respect to that. Robert from Jackson said we were talking about this issue of property taxes, just taxes in general, and how some states lean more into sales taxes to fund local governments, allowing those local governments without the need for approval, as we do here in Mississippi, by their state legislatures, to layer on, add an option, if you will, additional taxes that are dedicated to them at the sales tax. Talking about sales taxes. So the state sales tax rates in those states, I think, are roughly equivalent or maybe slightly lower, slightly more than ours, which is 7%. You guys know that. But then they, again, lap on additional sales tax components where those additional layers are dedicated to the county, the parish, the city. And that's how money is allocated and distributed. That includes school districts as well in that. So Robert from Jackson says, Gerard, would a higher sales tax hurt the working poor disproportionately? And I think that was when I was sharing that, did a little math, working with some data the Department of Revenue was kind enough to provide, just out of curiosity more than anything else, looking at the possibility of replacing our car tax, ad valorem taxes, which are quite high, quite elevated relative to the rest of the country. If we replace that with a sales tax, it turns out that in most counties in Mississippi, 1.2 to 1.5% additional sales tax layer that would be dedicated to the local entities that currently receive and allocated the same way, currently receive monies from our ad valorem taxes on vehicles, would do it. That would mean no car tax. You just essentially pay a slightly higher sales tax. And so Robert says, would that hurt the poor proportionally, disproportionately? I think the question is, and I'm not trying to dodge the question here, Robert, is to define hurt. Because is it true, if you looked at it this way, that, yeah, when you have lower amount of income, you typically spend more of what you make? But bear in mind, Robert, you don't pay sales taxes on your rent. Or if you have a mortgage, you don't pay it on that. You don't pay it on your insurance. There's a lot of stuff. We went through this exercise. You remember, Rhino, when there was a proposal in, was it 23, 22, to eliminate the income tax in a very short, compressed period of time, but increase sales taxes at the state level to mitigate. And we looked at, there's a lot of stuff you buy you don't pay sales taxes on. Professional services, lots of different professional services, for example, you don't pay sales taxes on. We don't pay sales taxes on fuel, is another example. So, yes, you could certainly argue that the lower income folks pay more, spend more of what they make on goods and services that are, in fact, subject to sales tax. Doesn't mean they spend less money than someone with affluence on those same items, such as food, although I think it's probably safe to say that someone or a household with less income probably doesn't go out to eat a lot and spend it on expensive fine dining the way someone with a higher income, more affluent. But we also, do we not have to look at the other states that have 10%, 9.5%, 10% sales taxes? People don't like change. I get it. But the same is true with respect to trying to slay this property tax dragon. The idea that you could just completely eliminate property taxes or even significantly reduce property taxes without some other source of revenue to offset, to counter, it's just not practical. It's not realistic. It's not financially, economically, or mathematically viable. Coming right back with some tickets to Chicago for the final segment of Middays. Stay with us.
Hello, I'm Sean Tyndall.
You know what that means. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
We'll do it live
on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. There it is, 25 or 6 to 4. How good is that? All right, so why don't you go ahead and give the tickets away, and then we got some sound we got to play for you that comes from the city of Philadelphia, the mayor of Philly. But here you go. Give some tickets away.
Yeah, the bump in was the clue. One of the best-selling bands of all time, Chicago's, coming to Brandon at the Amphitheater on May 1st, and you don't want to miss it. Tickets for the show are on sale now at the Brandon Amphitheater box office or online at Ticketmaster.com. But we're giving you a chance to win a free pair of tickets to see Chicago. All you got to do is be the 15th person to text us 25 or 6 to 4 to the C Spire text line. That's 601-879-4395. Be the 15th person to text 25 or 6 to 4, and you'll win a free pair of tickets to see Chicago at the Brandon Amphitheater on May 1st.
There you go. All right, so I know you're busy counting as those come in, but when you get to a breaking point there, we're going to play some sound for you that really does exemplify this analysis, I guess, that we've made before, that these Democrats believe that the taxes that you pay and you send to government, all income actually starts out as their property, their assets. And whatever they let you keep, that's just out of their charity and their altruism. And this lady that, when Rhino gets ready, and plays this clip, she really does, prove it. She does. You ready? Go.
We are open for business here, but how dare you tell me, as mayor of this city, to tell the people in this city that we cannot and should not enact what is one of the most limited powers that we have, and that is to decide how we will drive revenue to the school district of Philadelphia.
Don't tell me, how dare you? How dare you tell me how much of your money I'm going to take? That's unbelievable. I mean, there it is, embodied, essentially, in this concept that I've described, that these Democrats believe that all income starts as theirs. Just be glad and grateful that you get to keep a little of it. That's insane. It's insipid is what it is. Golly. Unbelievable. You got a winner on the 25 or 6 to 4?
Yep, just waiting to confirm.
All right. On the C Spire text line, happy birthday, brother. It's always a pleasure to listen, and thank you for doing your part in keeping Mississippi informed and bringing your point of view. We appreciate you, my friend, and hope you two stay on for a long time. Really appreciate that. It's Nathan in Smith County. Thank you, Nathan. So I came across that video and said, man, this is like just a perfect example of exactly what we've been saying. No, it's my money. Not yours. God, dog. What is this, a kingdom? It feels like it sometimes, doesn't it? Is it the fiefdom of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? She thinks it is. And you know this, couldn't hold a candle to the people who truly do pay most of the taxes that fund all of her crazy programs. Be grateful to those people rather than lash out at them, bark at them, yell at them like that. Golly, man, how can they be so clueless? Let's see here. Wild hook, big leg kick is Jack Nicklaus, Gary Player, Tom Watson, open the Masters. That's Gary in the Berg. He says, will there be anyone in the gallery on the left side of the first tee when Nicklaus tees off at the 27 Masters? Hopefully the marshals at Augusta will have that taken care of. That was a very hard hook, and the gallery was saved by the drop in elevation. Jack has hip issues. Man, they're old. It's hard for them to swing it and hit it straight like the old days, Gary, but God bless them. They're just iconic out there. Roman Augusta National. Pretty cool. God, man. There are a lot of federal cuts that are headed down, I think, to the hospital industry in this country, not just in this state. And I do absolutely believe that the president is right in at least attempting or letting the country know that the federal government needs to return to providing services that are core to its function and that are enumerated in the Constitution. We've drifted far too away from that. Now, of course, it's a monster. It's a leviathan that's just hard to put back in a bottle. But he said it directly. Medicaid, Medicare, daycare, we can't pay for that anymore. He said it. You states are going to have to step up. Well, we've had a good day. We're out of here, and a good week. We're out of here today. Back with you again on Monday. Have a great weekend to everyone. Stay safe, and God bless.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.